So hopefully you've seen by now that there are some perfectly valid reasons why you believed you weren't creative or not as creative as you think you are, and at the same time are starting to open up to the possibility that you actually are more creative than you think. Go through logic of everybody having a right and a left brain. We just need to learn how to access them. The next step I'd like to do is to go through some research and some other authors and people who have taken a look at creativity and seen some interesting findings that can hopefully keep pecking away at the belief that you're not creative, and really recognize, yes, you absolutely are. So the first thing I'd like to do is share with you how I discovered the creative process. I was a student at the University of Washington, and I was in one of the libraries, and I was looking at books on creativity, and I came across this really short, really small book, really old book that talked about the creative process, this idea that there's a series of stages that a person goes through to access their creativity. And I'm going to share that with you, but I also want to share with you this experiment that was done, or a research study that showed that they looked at like several different characteristics between people to see what made somebody considered creative versus somebody who's not considered creative. And out of all these different characteristics, approximately 30 of them, there was only one defining characteristic, and that was simply those who were considered creative were the ones who believed that they were creative. A different study was done by psychologist and author Robert Sternberg. Now, he did something different. He looked at multiple studies over the course of 30 years. He looked at studies on wisdom, intelligence, creativity, and leadership. And after the 30 years of research that he studied, he concluded that creative people have one thing in common. And to quote him, at some point, they decided to be creative, unquote. There's that word, decide to be creative. So it takes it a little further. Not only did they believe that they're creative, they decided to be creative. So a little more evidence that this is something where we all have a choice. So this next study is different because this one was more of a questionnaire sent to people who were already considered geniuses or very famous creative thinkers in America and England. These were done in about the 1930s and 40s. A Cambridge professor sent these questionnaires and had interviews, and he identified the characteristics that they all described, and he saw that indeed there are these series of stages that these people go through when they have their breakthrough thinking. So it's kind of neat to kind of read some firsthand accounts from people like Aldous Huxley and Bertrand Russell and William Somerset Maugham and Yeats. It's pretty cool to see that they had the same experiences and similar characteristics that I've experienced when I've done the creative process, and you will too if you keep going. Another set of research was done in Berkeley in the 70s by a psychologist named Donald McKinnon. And he also, saw that creativity wasn't something people either have or don't. It's not like intelligence, it's not associated even to intelligence. It's really more what he said was most creatives simply had a way or facility for being able to get into a particular mood or a way of operating. And he described that particular set of skills as play, the ability to be childlike and the ability to want to explore ideas just for the sake of play. So hopefully that evidence, that research can help you see how creativity is not really something you either have or you don't. It's more about your belief, and it's more about what you do with your mind and how you use it than it is about whether you have it or not. To sum it all up with one of the more famous quotes attributed to Henry Ford, and I'm paraphrasing because I've seen various versions, but the easy one is, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. That's the bottom line. It really is all about your belief. But why is that the case? There's a few different theories, so I'd like to go into that next. So one of the reasons why believing you're creative gives you that ability to be creative is because you'll try things and you'll do things that you wouldn't do if you didn't believe you were creative. It's just a matter of being willing to take risks, being willing to try things, being willing to fail, being willing to learn, being willing to grow. There's a book by Carol Dweck called Mindset, and she talks about people having one of two primary mindsets, either a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, and that I think there's a pretty strong correlation with that idea of a growth mindset. People that believe that they're not done growing and thinking, they believe in the idea of plasticity in their brains and that they can acquire new skills, whereas those who have a fixed mindset are comfortable with what they've got and they don't need to grow anymore in that particular area, and so they never try. The other thing is trying to keep going. One of the things, John Cleese, one of my favorite actors and comedians, he has a whole series of videos and a whole company related to leadership and creativity and management and all that kind of great stuff. But what he does is he talks about the idea that back when he was in Monty Python, he definitely believed that there were people that were more talented than he was or more capable, but they wouldn't spend as much time as he did in their writing, and he spent more time, and he just kept waiting it out. He kept trying new ideas and allowing for new ideas to keep coming. And eventually, when it was all said and done, his work was more creative than the others just because he kept going. So I think that's another thing that differentiates people who believe they're creative. They'll just keep trying new things.